There are 10,000 ways to die in the 41st millennium, but only one way to truly live, to survive long enough to see the galaxy burn. I remember light, not sunlight, not warmth, but the kind of light that bleeds from the fabric of creation when it's torn apart. One moment I was standing atop the ruins of my old world, the monarchs defeated, my shadows loyal, my purpose complete. And the next I was falling through a wound in reality itself. The air, if it could be called that, screamed. Space itself warped and twisted around me, dragging my essence into a place that was neither life nor death. The system's voice was gone. My connection to the shadow realm flickered like a dying flame. Only the infinite pressure of unseen eyes remained, watching me from every direction. I fell through colors no human tongue could name, through screams that had never been born. The warp, I would learn its name later, welcomed me like a starving god. When I awoke, the world was ash. A barren wasteland stretched in every direction. What few structures remained were nothing but charred skeletons of war machines. The sky bled crimson light through a smog of burning promethium. A city once stood here. I could feel the echoes of 1 billion deaths still clinging to the soil. My armor hummed faintly as I rose. The shadows around me whispered, faint and broken, their loyalty struggling to reassemble after the dimensional fracture. Then I saw movement. Shapes in flak armor, soldiers, grim-faced, their lasguns shaking in their hands. They shouted words in a tongue I did not yet understand. Their helmets glinted with imperial sigils. One of them made the sign of a two-headed eagle across his chest. They called me Daemon. I raised a hand to show peace, but the first lasbolt hit me square in the chest. The flash burned through my armor's outer layer, leaving nothing but smoke and irritation. Their fear was immediate. One of them dropped his weapon, another screamed into his vox. The next volley came heavier. Plasma fire lit the ruins blue-white, vaporizing concrete around me. I felt irritation stir, not pain, that had long been forgotten, but the instinct to respond. My shadow stretched across the sand, and from it rose a dozen figures, familiar silhouettes forged from darkness itself. Iron-clad warriors, wolves, knights, assassins, each one a loyal subject to their king. The soldiers stopped firing. Their eyes widened behind cracked visors as the dead world filled with impossible shapes. Then came the screams. The fight lasted less than a minute. Shadows tore through them like smoke through flesh, silent and efficient. The last survivor dropped to his knees, mumbling prayers. I caught the name Emperor among the sobs. The word burned strangely in my mind. Emperor. It carried weight, divine and oppressive all at once. I turned away from the corpse-strewn sand. Around me the shadows kneeled, awaiting command. The system's interface flickered into life for a heartbeat, distorted symbols, static-filled runes, and then vanished again. Whatever had brought me here was not of my world's making. As I began walking, I saw colossal spires in the distance, Gothic towers built on the bones of dead titans. The shadows shifted uneasily as the ground trembled beneath us. The air itself was alive, pulsing, whispering. It wasn't wind, it was voices.
thousands of them, layered and maddening, calling my name though they had never known it. I had entered a place of gods and monsters, and I wasn't sure which I was anymore. A low growl echoed from the sky. Dropships screamed through the clouds, black-armored soldiers descending like angels of death. Their insignia, a silver eye crowned with fire, burned on their pauldrons. They were not like the first ones. Their presence radiated fanatic devotion and psychic pressure strong enough to make my lesser shadows tremble. One of them raised a flaming blade. His vox distorted his voice, but I understood enough. By the order of the Holy Inquisition, burn the heretic. Flame engulfed the ruins as they opened fire. For the first time since my arrival, I smiled. This world, this galaxy, was alive with power, cruelty, and madness. I could feel the system rebooting, adapting, feeding on the chaos itself. And somewhere deep within the warp, something laughed. If you crave more tales from the dark millennium, the Emperor protects those who listen. Then I vanished into the smoke. The first lesson I learned in this new galaxy was simple. Everything burns. Ash rained from the blackened sky as the inquisitorial strike team advanced through the ruins. Their precision was admirable, each movement disciplined, every footstep calculated. They had the air of soldiers who had seen worlds die and lived to tell of it. But what they faced now was something their catechisms had never prepared them for. The firestorm rolled across the battlefield, a sea of promethium and screaming light. I could feel the heat on my skin, but it did not hurt me. The shadows absorbed the flame, twisting it into black embers that spiraled around me like dying souls. My army moved silently behind the smoke, unseen by the mortals who believed themselves gods of war. Through the inferno strode the Inquisitor. He was a tall, imperious man, encased in ornate armor, engraved with prayers and seals of sanctity. A rosarius glowed at his chest, its light pulsing like a living heart. His voice boomed through the vox, calm and merciless. "In the Emperor's name, abomination, you will answer for your heresy." I studied him. His confidence was absolute, born from faith, not arrogance, a dangerous kind of strength, the same kind I had once seen in monarchs and hunters who believed in something greater than themselves. "Faith," I said quietly, the word awkward on my tongue. "You think that will save you?" He raised his sword, and the sky roared. A psychic shockwave slammed into me, hurling debris in every direction. I underestimated the force behind his conviction. This was no ordinary man. His will touched the warp itself, that living, howling sea of chaos that had swallowed me whole upon arrival. I could feel it inside his voice, coiling around his words like serpents of thought. I steadied myself. My shadow soldiers rose in response, black shapes moving in perfect silence. He charged, his blade carved through one of my shadows, dispersing it in a burst of burning ether. I watched, fascinated. My army was not supposed to die so easily. The warp's influence here made my connection unstable. This realm resisted my dominion, or perhaps sought to test it.
The Inquisitor struck again, his blows guided by prayer and hatred. But I was no mere mortal. I caught the flaming sword in my hand. The holy fire burned, yes, but it was a familiar pain, the kind that reminded me I still was. I closed my fist. The flame went out. The Inquisitor's eyes widened behind his mask, disbelief cracking his composure for the first time. I could see the realization dawning that I was something beyond his sacred texts, not demon, not Xenos, not man. "Impossible," he whispered. "Everything is." The shadows surged forward. In seconds, the inquisitorial strike team was overwhelmed. Bolter fire became muffled screams. I walked through it all, a calm observer amid the storm of death. When the last body fell, I turned to the Inquisitor, impaled by the tendrils of darkness that held him aloft. His blood hissed on the black sand as he glared at me. "You think yourself a god, but gods bleed too." I looked down at my arm, a deep wound seared across the wrist where the flaming blade had struck earlier. The edges smoked faintly, refusing to heal. He smiled through the pain. "The Emperor sees you. You cannot hide from his light." I let him speak his last prayer, and I consumed his shadow. The moment it merged with mine, I felt something strange, alien knowledge flooding my mind. Memories of the Imperium, the Holy Terra, the endless wars, the faith that chained billions to the worship of a dying god. And beneath it all, the presence of that God, immense, radiant, and ancient. For the briefest instant, it looked back at me. The Emperor. A gaze like the sun piercing my soul. I felt no hatred from it, only exhaustion, as if he had seen countless monsters like me rise and fall through the ages. The connection severed, leaving only silence. I stood among the ashes, my army kneeling around me. The wind carried the scent of burned ceramic and blood. In the distance, I could hear the rumble of artillery, the Imperial Guard moving in, thousands of soldiers, tanks, and faith-driven zealots preparing to cleanse the heretic. I smiled faintly. "A galaxy of endless war," I murmured. "Then I'll fit right in." My shadows stirred, feeding on the corpses, their strength returning. The world itself trembled beneath my boots. Far above, in orbit, Imperial augurs registered a spreading darkness, a growing zone of psychic interference where no light could penetrate. Reports would call it the Black Crown Anomaly. And on Terra, in the depths of the Golden Throne, the Emperor stirred for the first time in 10,000 years. Still with us in the darkness? Hit that like button if this tale chills your soul. The ground quaked beneath the weight of war. By dawn, the ash-choked horizon was alive with light, trace of fire cutting through the smog like comets. The Imperial Guard had arrived in force. Columns of Lehman Russ battle tanks thundered through the ruins, their cannons booming in synchronized fury. Above them, Valkyrie gunships howled through the air, raining down storms of lasfire. I stood at the heart of their advance, watching through the eyes of my shadows. The human soldiers moved with mechanical precision. Despite their frailty, there was beauty in their unity. The way they marched into certain death, reciting prayers to a god who never answered. The Voxnet crackled across the wasteland. By order of Lord Inquisitor Kael Thrix, this sector is under total exterminatus sanction. The heretic will be purged in the Emperor's light. Their faith was iron, their conviction unbreakable. I admired it, even envied it. But I was no heretic. I was something else entirely. The first shell exploded beside me, vaporizing a chunk of earth and scattering molten rock. My armor rippled with dark energy, the shadows forming a barrier against the firestorm. I extended my hand, and a dozen spectral tendrils erupted from the ground, piercing through tank hulls like spears. Steel screamed as machines died. From the wreckage arose my army. The shadows of fallen guardsmen, their armor blackened and hollow, stood shoulder to shoulder, reflections of their former selves, serving me now in death. The living soldiers screamed as they watched their comrades rise against them. The Vox filled with panicked voices, prayers, curses, orders. "Shadow anomaly expanding! It's raising the dead! Emperor, save us!" Then static. I could feel it, the system adapting once more. This world's psychic field wasn't resisting anymore. It was merging with mine. The warp fed on emotion, on death and fear. I had brought both in abundance. From the command bastion, a new voice cut through the chaos, calm, disciplined, seasoned. "Focus fire. Bring in the basilisks. Target the central anomaly. No retreat." The man commanding them was no fool. Through my shadow's vision, I saw him, a Lord Commander, his armor bearing the insignia of the Cadian 143rd. Scars lined his face, and his eyes burned with soldier's resolve. He reminded me of the hunters I'd led long ago, men who'd chosen death rather than surrender. "Magnificent," I muttered. "Let's see how far your courage takes you." A storm of artillery fire tore through the ruins. Each shell carried the Emperor's blessing, etched with purity seals and holy scripts. The impact shook mountains. For the first time since my arrival, the light forced my shadows to waver. I gritted my teeth, not in pain, but defiance. The warp trembled around me, as though laughing at the audacity of mankind. Then came a whisper, soft at first, like the hum of a familiar voice just out of reach. "Monarch of shadows, you do not belong here." It breathed through the ether. I froze. The voice didn't come from this world. It was older, vaster. The air thickened, my vision blurred, and the battlefield dissolved into darkness. I stood again in the endless void, the realm between worlds, the place I had fallen through. And there in the abyss were eyes, dozens of them, watching, blinking in impossible rhythm. "You trespass upon the domain of gods. The immaterial bends, but it does not serve. Leave or be consumed." I stared into the void, feeling its hunger. I was consumed once. I learned to devour back. The eyes blinked, and the darkness screamed. The warp tried to crush me, pressing its nightmares into my mind. Visions of galaxies burning, of men turning into beasts, of demons feasting on human souls. And in every vision I stood among them, the Black King, commanding an army of eternal night.
When the vision faded, I was back on the battlefield. My armor pulsed with new veins of power. The warp had touched me, but I had touched it back. The Imperial Guard's lines were breaking. Tanks burned, soldiers fled, and the land itself darkened beneath a spreading veil of shadow. At the edge of the horizon, the Inquisition's fleet began descending, kilometer-long ships blotting out the sun, their weapons glowing like divine judgment. I felt the corners of my mouth twist upward. A galaxy of endless war indeed, I murmured. My shadow army roared as one. From the depths of the earth, the colossal form of my shadow dragon, Kamish, reborn, tore through the crust, wings of black flame spreading wide. The soldiers below dropped to their knees, whispering prayers and curses as its shadow devoured the light. The Inquisition would call this planet lost, the Mechanicus would label it corrupted, and the ecclesiastically would write sermons about the Black Hunter who consumed a world. And somewhere deep within the warp, the laughter came again, louder, hungrier. The warp was watching me now, and it was afraid. The tension builds. Subscribe to witness more tales from the dark millennium.
Fire fell from the heavens like judgment itself. Orbital bombardment rained across the ruins as the Inquisition's fleet unleashed its wrath. Each blast struck with the fury of gods, atomizing cities, vaporizing the very bedrock. To the Imperium, this was mercy, purity by annihilation. To me, it was noise. I watched the sky bleed, my eyes reflecting every detonation. The world's crust split apart, molten rivers carving through the corpses of tanks and soldiers alike. My shadows burned, screamed, and reformed. Even death was meaningless here. They belonged to me now. But for the first time I felt the strain. The warp's energy pulsed like a living organ beneath my skin, erratic and unstable. Each surge of power came with whispers, new voices layered atop the old, each murmuring a different madness. He feeds upon us. He is not of the warp, yet he consumes its breath. The Shadow Monarch, the Unbound, the Devourer of Souls. The title echoed through my mind like a curse. And then came the faithful. From the north marched a new kind of army, their banners of parchment and gold catching the firelight. Sisters of battle, the Adepta Sororitas. Where the guard fought from duty, these women fought from belief. I could feel their conviction long before I saw them, irradiant pressure pressing back against the warp's corruption. Their hymns rose above the inferno, voices sharp as blades. In his name, even shadows shall fear the light. Rows of immolators and exorcist tanks advanced through the ash fields, their weapons blazing. Holy promethium burned bright blue as it washed across my advancing shadows. For the first time since I arrived, my army faltered. Faith had weight here. Wherever their songs reached, my soldiers hesitated, not from fear, but from resistance. The light seared at their essence, denying the rule of death that bound them to me. I stood amid the storm watching them burn and realized something profound. In this galaxy, faith was not illusion, it was power. Their leader strode forward, Canoness Preceptor Seraphine Vallon, clad in gilded armor that glowed like a miniature sun. She carried an ornate bolt gun inscribed with scripture and a power sword burning with sanctified plasma. Her every step left footprints of light in the soot. "Abomination," she cried, her voice carried by the choir of vox-amplified sisters behind her. "By decree of the ecclesiasticarchy, your soul shall be purged in flame and prayer." I tilted my head, intrigued. "And if I have no soul?" Her gaze hardened. "Then we will burn until you do." She charged. Faith met shadow. Light clashed with void. Her sword seared through the tendrils of my essence, forcing me back step by step. Behind her, the sisters sang louder, their chorus rising into a frenzy of worship. The ground beneath them glowed, each word a weapon against the dark. I countered with my own command. My shadow surged forward, forming a shield wall, absorbing the blessed flame. The air between us shimmered as heat and darkness collided. The sheer force of her conviction battered at me like physical blows. For the first time, I felt something close to respect. "You fight like someone who's already seen death," I said between strikes. "I have," she replied, parrying another blow with divine precision. "And I met the Emperor there. He sent me back to finish what he began." The words hit me harder than her blade. She truly believed it. Her strike found my shoulder, cutting deep. The burning energy licked through my armor, forcing me to one knee. Shadows hissed, retreating under the radiance of her faith. Around us, the battlefield became a cathedral of ruin, hymnals clashing with screams, devotion with damnation. I looked up at her, and for a moment I saw the glimmer of humanity buried under centuries of dogma. She wasn't fighting for power. She was fighting for meaning. I raised my hand, and the ground split open. From the depths rose hundreds of black spears, obsidian monoliths of pure shadow essence. Each one hummed with the energy of the fallen. She whispered a prayer. "Emperor, guide my hand." I smiled faintly. "Let's see if he answers." The battlefield vanished in black light. When the smoke cleared, only silence remained. The sisters' songs were gone, their bodies lying peacefully amid fields of molten glass. At the center stood Seraphine, kneeling, alive but broken. Her blade was gone. Her faith, however, burned brighter than ever. "Even if you slay us all, our faith will consume you." I regarded her quietly. Then, for reasons I didn't fully understand, I let her live. "You remind me," I said softly, "that monsters and saints are often born from the same pain." She looked up, eyes filled with confusion and fury. "What are you?" I turned away, the shadows closing around me. "A visitor." As I vanished into the smoke, I heard her whisper, "The Emperor protect us." But even she sounded unsure. Chains of faith and fire, I thought. If belief itself can scar the shadows, then I must learn how to wield it too. Because the next time I faced such light,
it would not be human. Comment your theories below. What corruption stalks our heroes?
The world burned for 7 days. When the last flames died, only silence remained, the kind of silence that felt alive. The Imperium's armies had withdrawn, believing their exterminatus decree fulfilled. To them, the planet was now a lifeless cinder, purified by fire. But beneath the glassed surface, life stirred. My shadows had adapted, retreating deep underground during the bombardment. The planet's crust had become my cocoon. When I emerged, the air was poison, the sky fractured with crimson lightning. Warp storms danced across the heavens, whispering like fevered ghosts. I felt them before I saw them, the things that dwelled in that unseen sea. Daemons. At first, they came as shapes within the storm, faces stretching across clouds, claws scratching at reality's edge. Then they began to take form, great rotting beasts of chaos lumbering from the burning sky, drawn to the same energy that had brought me here. The warp hungered, and I had given it a feast. The first daemon that approached me was massive, a thing of horn and iron, wings dripping molten blood. It landed amid the ruins with a roar that shook the planet's crust. Its voice rumbled through the air like thunder. You are not of this realm, yet you wield its breath. Who are you to drink of our master sea? I looked up at the towering monstrosity and felt only curiosity. Your master sea, I repeated. Strange, it felt empty when I drowned in it. The daemon's laughter was like a hurricane, bold words from a newborn godling. You reek of hunger and pride. You are kin to us, whether you accept it or not. I smiled faintly. Kinship implies equality. You kneel before your gods. Mine kneel before me. It lunged. The ground exploded under its charge. Its claws sliced through the air with the force of orbital bombardment. I raised my arm, the shadows forming a barrier that caught the blow. The impact sent tremors across the wasteland. The daemon's second strike shattered mountains. My counterattack was simple. One command. Rise! The blackened plain split open, and thousands of shadow soldiers erupted from the ground. The daemon staggered as spectral blades tore into its flesh. My army swarmed over it, devouring its form as though it were made of smoke and memory. When the light faded, only silence remained, and from the daemon's carcass a new shadow was born. It knelt before me, whispering in a voice like broken bells, "Master." The warp rippled. More daemons came, some drawn by fury, others by curiosity. They circled me, whispering names that were not mine: Devourer, Shadow Lord, Warp Thief. Everyone that attacked fell. Everyone that fell was reborn into shadow. With each victory my power grew, but so did the storm above. The warp reacted like a wounded beast, tearing open rifts across the planet. The laws of reality began to unravel.
Mountains floated like islands, rivers flowed upward into the burning clouds. And through it all, I felt something watching. Not the demons, not even the warp itself. Something older. When I closed my eyes, I saw glimpses of an infinite throne of golden fire and a man upon it, unmoving but alive. His gaze crossed light years, piercing through reality to look directly at me, the Emperor of mankind. The sheer force of his presence burned through my mind. I fell to one knee, shadows writhing in agony. My essence screamed under the weight of his will. It was not hatred I felt, it was judgment. "Who are you," he thundered across the warp, "to wield what you do not understand?" I tried to answer, but my words dissolved in ash. His light scorched my vision, driving back every trace of shadow. The daemons around me wailed and vanished, consumed by his radiance. For a moment, the warp itself recoiled. And then, silence. When I opened my eyes again, the storm had calmed. The daemons were gone. The world was empty once more. I realized something then. I wasn't the only one studying this new universe. It was studying me, too. The warp was learning my name, and the Emperor was learning my face. A faint wind stirred the ashes around me. From its whisper, I heard a dozen voices overlapping, fragments of madness, prophecy, and hunger. He does not belong. He must choose. He will either save or end us all. I stood in the silence and looked to the burning sky. The warp had sent its first warning, but I was not a man who bowed to warnings. I spread my hands, feeling the shadows surge once more. Then let it hunger. Let the warp come for me. Because if the warp was alive, it would learn to fear its prey. The tension builds. Subscribe to witness more tales from the dark millennium.
The galaxy began to whisper my name. Not in words, but in consequence. Wherever my shadow touched, the warp shifted, subtly at first, then violently. Ships traveling through the Imperium began to vanish without trace. Planets near my sphere of influence suffered nightmares that bled into waking reality. Astropaths screamed until their eyes melted. They called it a new anomaly, a dark echo. The Inquisition called it the Shadow Rebirth. I called it evolution. I moved between worlds like a phantom, unseen and unstoppable. My shadows fed upon the residue of chaos, devouring daemons, consuming psychic echoes, erasing warp rifts as though wiping blood from glass. For every horror extinguished, a fragment of that energy fused with me. Soon I realized something terrifying. The warp was not merely reacting to me, it was adapting to me. Each time I consumed its essence, the Imperium's boundaries trembled, reshaping to accommodate my existence. The gods of chaos, Khorne, Tzench, Nurgle, and Slaanesh began to take notice. Their influence pressed against me like a storm against glass. And then they spoke. The first to appear was Khorne, Lord of Blood. His voice erupted like cannon fire across my mind. You steal my slaughter, Shadowborn. You consume what is mine. Face me, and I shall crown your skull upon my throne. His rage was pure, primal, the embodiment of war itself. I didn't answer. Instead, I let the silence stretch until it suffocated his echo. Then came Tzench, the architect of fate, his words dripping with serpentine amusement. A mortal who devours the currents of destiny? How curious! You could unmake the game itself, or become its next piece. I felt his threads attempt to coil around my soul, weaving false futures and false hopes. I severed them. Nurgle arrived last, his laughter bubbling through rot and decay. Poor little shadow, so hungry, so lost. Come to me, I'll teach you peace in decay. His sickness tried to seep into my body, but it found no purchase. My shadows devoured even corruption. Then the fourth spoke, not a voice, but a feeling. Pleasure, pain, perfection, chaos, all at once. Slaanesh. You taste exquisite, Sung Jinwoo. Every fear, every victory, every moment you defy the universe, I could make eternity from you. That one almost reached me. Almost. But my will was absolute. I tore their whispers apart and let the void swallow them. My defiance echoed through the Imperium like thunder, and for the first time in 1,000 years, the Chaos Gods recoiled. They remembered fear. I thought that was the end of it, until the Imperium came. The Inquisition dispatched an entire Ordo Malleus strike fleet to the system I occupied. 30 Grey Knights, hundreds of stormtroopers, 3 battleships bearing the sigil of the Emperor himself. They came to destroy me. When their fleet entered orbit, I felt their purity before I saw them, a blinding force, holy and merciless. The Grey Knights descended like meteors, their armor gleaming, their faith an inferno. By decree of the God Emperor, their leader thundered, you are declared Abominatus Majoris, creature of shadow, surrender or be purged in holy flame. Their faith was magnificent, terrifying, and utterly futile. The first wave struck my vanguard and fell. My shadows rose in silence, moving like liquid night. Each knight they slew was reborn under my banner, their silver armor blackened, their eyes burning violet. But they did not break. The Grey Knights fought like legends reborn, their faith slicing through my darkness like sunlight through smoke. Each one died screaming prayers, and for each death I felt a weight press upon me, not guilt, but recognition. They were not monsters, they were soldiers of belief. And for the first time in this cursed universe, I felt respect. Their commander, a grand master whose name I never learned, faced me amid the ruins of his brothers. His armor was shattered, his blade cracked, but his eyes burned brighter than stars. "You cannot win," he said, "not against us, not against him." I tilted my head. "Your God watches, but he does not move. You bleed for a corpse on a throne." He smiled, and in that moment I saw no fear, only devotion. "Then I bleed willingly." He charged. Our clash split the world in half. My shadow met his psychic flame, darkness against sanctified light. His sword pierced my chest, my hand crushed his heart. As we fell together, he whispered something I would never forget. "If he wills it, even shadows will serve the light." And then he died. I stood among the ruins of his army, the world collapsing into silence once more. That night I could not sleep, not because of guilt, but because of prophecy. His words lingered like embers. Maybe, in some future I could not yet see, the light and the shadow would no longer be enemies. Maybe I had a choice. The universe, it seemed, was not done testing me. The shadows deepen. Prepare for the final reckoning in the next chapter.
The death of the Grey Knights should have been the end, but it was only the beginning. Word of my existence spread through the Inquisition like wildfire. I became a heresy whispered in silence, a curse written in hidden archives. My power was no longer just a threat, it was an anomaly that defied imperial classification. I wasn't demon, Xenos, or Psyker. I was something new. The Administratum coined a name for me, the Shadow Monarch, a heretic so powerful that even chaos refused him. I didn't care for titles, but the galaxy did, and titles had power. My shadows swelled as new worlds fell under my quiet dominion. Each conquest brought more whispers, more fear, and more attention. Chaos warbands began hunting me, hoping to claim my strength. Imperial assassins were dispatched to erase me. Even the Eldar Farseers cast their sight across the skein of fate and saw only blackness. They feared me because they didn't understand me. The truth was simple. I wasn't a conqueror. I was a cleanser. The warp's corruption was a plague, and I was the cure it deserved. But like every cure, I was poison to everything else. On the desolate forge world of Varnock Prime, I made my stand, not by choice, but by inevitability. When I arrived, the planet was already dying. Warp storms raged across its skies, tearing apart manufacturing and silencing the machine coats. The Adeptus Mechanicus had sealed themselves in underground sanctums, chanting binary prayers for deliverance that would never come. They weren't my enemies. Not yet. Their Magos, an ancient figure named Dominus Zeroth, approached me through a field of broken servitors. His body was more metal than flesh, his voice a distorted hymn of static and awe. "You," he said, optics focusing, "an entity of shadow, but not of the warp. Your presence defies sacred logic. Are you the Omnissiah incarnate?" I shook my head. No god, just a man who learned how to command darkness. He tilted his head, analyzing every atom of my form. "Then you are the machine god's paradox." Zeroth was the first human in this galaxy who didn't immediately try to kill me. Instead, he made an offer. "Let us study you, not to control, but to understand. The Omnissiah's will may speak through forbidden patterns." I accepted, not because I trusted him, but because I was curious. I wanted to see if there was still something human in the Imperial's cold machinery. The experiments began beneath the planet's surface. The Magos and his tech priests measured my shadows with auspex arrays, dissected fragments of corrupted essence, and recorded psychic resonance at frequencies never before observed. But curiosity turned to fear. After a week of study, the Mechanicus discovered something impossible. My power wasn't drawn from the warp at all. It devoured it. They tested it by opening a sealed demon engine before me. The moment the creature emerged, it screamed once and vanished, erased from existence. The readings broke every law of reality they knew. "You are antithetical to chaos, a weapon against the warp itself," Zeroth said. He turned to his subordinates. "Transmit this to Mars. The Fabricator General must be informed." But I stopped him. I said quietly, "If you do that, the Inquisition will come, and they will burn everything to ash." He paused. His logic circuits calculated risk and agreed. "Then we shall remain silent." For a time, peace existed. I aided their defenses, purged the warp breaches, and silenced demons in their data vaults. Varnock Prime began to heal. But nothing in the 41st millennium remains untouched for long. One night, the void screamed. A fleet emerged from the warp, massive, ancient, and hateful. Chaos sigils burned across their hulls. The Black Legion had come. Abaddon the Despoiler himself sought me. The War Master's fleet descended in fire and madness. Vox channels filled with laughter and threats. War horns blared as drop pods rained from orbit, carrying corrupted Astartes with eyes like burning stars. "Dominus Zeroth Kelict, we cannot stand against this. Even the Omnissiah's blessings cannot—" I raised a hand. My shadows expanded, blanketing the skies. "They won't take this world." Abaddon's voice echoed across the comms, cold and mocking. "So this is the shadow that devours demons. Tell me, mortal, do you think yourself beyond my reach?" I didn't answer. Instead, I summoned every shadow, every fragment of darkness that had ever obeyed my will. From the cracks in reality itself they came, silent, infinite, unending.
When the first wave of Chaos Marines landed, the ground split open. My army rose like a black tide, swallowing the corrupted Astartes whole. But Abaddon didn't stop. He descended personally, teleporting into the heart of the Forged Citadel with his demon sword Dracnian blazing in fury. I met him there. The air burned, reality fractured. He swung first, and the world shattered with it. My shadows collided with his demon weapon, the clash sending waves of annihilation across the battlefield. "You are nothing," Abaddon roared. "You are a pretender, another false god among many." I blocked his next strike, our blades locked. "Then kill me," I said, voice calm. The duel was apocalyptic. Servitors melted, steel walls turned to ash, even the tech priests fled. But for every wound he inflicted, my shadows restored me. For every strike I returned, his armor cracked. And when his sword faltered for a heartbeat, I drove my hand into his chest. Shadows erupted from his body, devouring the demon essence within. Abaddon screamed, a sound that tore through the warp itself. When the light faded, his armor fell empty. Dracnian lay shattered beside him. The Black Legion broke. Varnok Prime stood silent once more. But victory came with revelation. As I absorbed Abaddon's power, I felt something vast and ancient watching me through the warp. Something older than the Chaos Gods, and it whispered my name. Sung Jinwoo. That whisper would change everything.
The voice in the void was unlike anything I had ever felt. It wasn't chaos, it wasn't divine. It was something else, something that remembered when the galaxy was still young. When the last of Abaddon's echoes faded, the whisper grew clearer. It slithered through the warp, bypassing every psychic defense, brushing against my very essence. You consume the corruption, yet you are not its opposite. You are its consequence. I stood atop the ruins of Varnok Prime, the black sun rising behind me. The wind carried the ashes of fallen legionaries, their armor still faintly whispering praise to their dead god. "Who are you?" I asked aloud. The reply came not as sound, but as memory. Entire epochs flashing before my eyes, a galaxy before humanity. Empires built on impossible technology, living gods made of metal, the Necron tier, the war in heaven. And then a name older than the warp itself, the Void Dragon. You devour that which is unclean. You strip chaos from existence. You are kin. My shadow shuddered. For the first time, I felt small. The Catan, the star gods, beings who had once enslaved galaxies. The Emperor himself was rumored to have imprisoned the Void Dragon beneath Mars. But what spoke to me now wasn't confined. It was awake, or awakening, and it had noticed me. The skies of Varnok Prime trembled. Lightning without thunder split the clouds, forming a spiral of black light. From within it came a fleet of living metal. Croissant-shaped ships of impossible geometry drifted through orbit, their green energy lances carving through the remains of the Black Legion fleet. The Necrons had come. Their arrival was not an invasion, it was a summons. A massive monolith descended upon the Forge World's surface, crushing mountains as it landed. From its gateway strode legions of skeletal warriors, their eyes burning with soulless emerald flame. At their head stood a towering figure, cloaked in silver and green, his body carved with runes that pulsed like the heartbeat of a dead god. Tracine the Infinite. He raised a clawed hand, and the Necron warriors froze mid-step. Sung Jinwoo, the Shadow Monarch. You bear energy beyond mortal comprehension. My archives strain to define you. I studied him carefully. You're here for me. Tracine's head tilted slightly. Indeed, the Silent King wishes to observe you from a safe distance, but I, collector of curiosities, have come to understand you. Tell me, flesh thing, are you a weapon or are you a warning? I'm neither. Lies. Everything in this galaxy is either tool or threat. Which are you to the Necron Empire? I didn't answer. Instead, I stepped forward. Shadows crawled from my fingertips, coating the ground like liquid night. Tracine's optics dimmed in what might have been surprise. Fascinating. Your energy signature disrupts Necron phase matrices. You could unmake entire tomb worlds. Then don't make me prove it. Before he could respond, the sky tore apart again. A psychic storm unlike any I had felt before erupted above us, warping light itself. The warp had found a way back in, and from it poured horrors beyond naming. Demons, thousands, a vengeance from the chaos gods themselves. Tracine turned toward the rift, his tone suddenly cold. This is not my war. He motioned, and his warriors began to teleport away. I stepped into his path. You opened the door. You don't get to walk away. For the first time, I saw hesitation flicker across his ancient faceplate. Then something like respect. Very well, Shadow Monarch. Let us see if your legend is worth preserving. The Necron legions deployed in silence, their formations perfect, unyielding. My shadows rose beside them, a living wave of black fire. For the first time, the unliving and the unholy fought side by side, logic and void united against madness. The warp storm intensified. A massive figure emerged from it, horned and winged, a greater demon of Khorne, its armor dripping with molten blood. You dare defy the god of war again? It roared, its axe as large as a titan's arm. Tracine spoke dryly. You know, I rather liked this planet.
I launched forward, shadows coiling around my body. The demon swung, but I was already gone. My blade sliced through its chest, consuming its essence. It didn't die quietly. It exploded. Its death scream tore open reality itself. For a heartbeat, I saw the warp and the material overlap, and I saw something worse than gods. A shape that devoured light, a void within the void, watching, waiting. The void dragon's whisper returned, sharper now. You see it, don't you? The true hunger. The warp was never your enemy. It was merely a symptom. The demon horde faltered as my power surged beyond control. Every shadow in the system responded. They merged, multiplied, and became something else. A crown of darkness formed above me, jagged, endless, alive. Tracine's optics widened in what might have been surprise. Impossible. You're transcending dimensional boundaries. He was right. I was no longer merely a man wielding shadows. I was becoming their will. The warp screamed, the Necrons stood in silent awe, and somewhere deep beneath Mars, an imprisoned god began to stir. When the battle ended, nothing remained of the demons, not even dust. Tracine approached slowly, scanning me again. The silent king will not like this. You threaten balance itself. Then tell him, I said, voice low, tell him the balance was broken long before I arrived. He paused. And what will you do now, Shadow Monarch? I looked toward the stars, toward Terra. I'll find the corpse they call Emperor and ask him what he's really protecting. The tension builds. Subscribe to witness more tales from the dark Millennium.
Terra, the throne world, the beating, decaying heart of the Imperium of man. Billions prayed there every second, their faith feeding the corpse that ruled the stars. It was said that no mortal could set foot upon its surface uninvited, that the Emperor's light would incinerate the unworthy. I intended to test that truth. The journey was long, and the shadows whispered to me all the way. Varnock Prime was left behind, its forged citadels now silent monuments to what had transpired. Even the Necrons had withdrawn, vanishing like ghosts into the stars. But I was not alone. The fragments of souls I had absorbed, Grey Knights, Chaos Marines, demons, humans, now stirred inside me. Echoes of memory and power, bound in shadow. Their whispers formed a chorus of experience. The Grey Knight's voice still lingered most clearly. If he wills it, even shadows will serve the light. That thought haunted me as I neared the Sol system. The Imperial Navy's defenses were unlike anything I'd ever seen. Vast orbital bastions armed with macro lances, fleets of battleships patrolling in endless patterns, astropathic choirs guiding the guns of titanic fortresses that never slept. In the warp, their presence was blinding, a storm of psychic fire.
As I approached, the alarms began. Entire sectors went on red alert. The Adeptus Custodes stirred, their golden armor gleaming beneath the palace of the Emperor. But I was already there. My shadows didn't travel through space like ships, they flowed between space. I walked through reality's seams, emerging where no sensor could detect me. I appeared within the orbital ring known as the Cadian Remnant Bastion, a fortress station guarding the direct route to Terra. The first to spot me was a young officer, barely 20 standard years old. His eyes widened as the room darkened around him. "Contact on Deck 6! I repeat!" He didn't finish. Shadows silenced him gently, not in death, but in sleep. I wasn't here to slaughter, not yet. I moved through the corridors like mist, disabling systems, erasing records, bypassing Vox security with a thought. I had learned long ago that fear traveled faster than bullets, and I needed the Imperium to feel my arrival before I was seen. The Bastion's commander, a grizzled admiral named Halbrecht Vorn, finally confronted me in the command sanctum. He aimed his plasma pistol, voice trembling but resolute. "Identify yourself." "I am Sung Jinwoo. I've come for the Emperor." His expression hardened. "Blasphemy!" He fired. The bolt of plasma never reached me. My shadows caught it mid-flight, freezing it in place before absorbing the energy. "I mean no harm to your people, but I will see the truth behind your God." Vorn's faith flared, genuine, raw. "The Emperor needs no explaining. He is salvation." "Then let him prove it." I left him alive, though his beliefs would crumble before dawn. Moments later, I slipped past the final barrier, the psychic wall surrounding Terra. It was said to be impenetrable, a shield powered by the Emperor's own will. But I had devoured demons and silenced chaos gods. Compared to them, a dying god's barrier was merely stubborn. My shadows pressed against the barrier's golden light. It burned at first, holy energy searing the edges of my form. I gritted my teeth. The pain was unlike anything I'd known, not physical, but existential. For a moment, I thought I'd be erased. Then the voice spoke again. Not the void dragon, not chaos, something within the light. "You shouldn't be here." It was calm, ancient. "Turn back, Sung Jinwoo. The Emperor's will forbids entry." "I need answers. I need to know what I am and why I was brought here." "You are in imbalance, a wound made flesh. The galaxy cannot bear both you and him." "Then he can tell me himself." I pushed harder. Shadows and light collided in silence. For every inch I gained, I felt the Emperor's mind, vast, unending, burning with infinite purpose, a consciousness so enormous that even my shadows trembled. He saw me. For an instant, reality paused. Every soul in the Imperium froze mid-prayer. Every psyker screamed in unison.
and through their voices the Emperor spoke. "You are not of this world. No, but I've bled for it. You carry the hunger of the void, the taint of the warp, the defiance of gods. Why have you come? Because your galaxy is dying. Your light is fading. The warp devours everything, and I can stop it. You presume to understand the balance. I don't presume, I know." A silence followed, long enough to make me question if the Emperor had withdrawn. Then, unexpectedly, approach. The barrier opened, just enough for me to step through. The golden world of Terra spread before me, a tomb and a temple all at once. I walked through streets filled with pilgrims who wept at the mere sight of the sky. Titans loomed in the distance, immobile, their god engines dormant yet alive. And at the center of it all, the Imperial Palace, a fortress cathedral larger than continents. As I entered, the custodies turned their gaze upon me. Their halberds gleamed, their psychic presence burned brighter than suns. None moved, none spoke. They knew. The Emperor had allowed my entry. One among them, a warrior clad in radiant gold and crimson, stepped forward. His voice was deep, steady, reverent. "I am Shield Captain Tyberos. If the Master of Mankind summons you, then even shadows must bow." I nodded once. "Then lead me to him." He turned, wordless, and guided me through corridors lined with saints and history. Each step felt heavier, each breath thinner, because I could feel him now, the Emperor. His will burned through the air, through the walls, through me. And for the first time since I arrived in this cursed galaxy, I felt afraid. Comment your theories below. What corruption stalks our heroes?
The inner sanctum of the Imperial Palace was a cathedral of eternity, a place where time itself bent beneath the weight of faith and machinery. We walked through halls of gold and bone, past banners older than empires, through incense thick enough to choke the lungs. The walls were alive with chanting, hundreds of thousands of voices, all praying in perfect unison. They weren't just singing hymns, they were fueling him. The Emperor's power was not sustained by faith metaphorically. It was literal. Every prayer was a spark of psychic energy drawn into his dying body. And there, at the end of that golden nightmare, I saw it. The Golden Throne. A mountain of machinery, cables, and sanctified tubing. A life support system that was more prison than relic. Its light was blinding, a storm of psychic brilliance that burned the mind to look upon. And at its heart sat the Emperor of Mankind. I had seen gods before, arrogant, monstrous things in the warp, fueled by sin and madness. But this was different. This was divinity chained, holiness bound by human desperation. His body was a ruin of golden armor and decaying flesh. His soul burned like a star caged in rust. Even my shadows hesitated. They recoiled as if standing before a sun. The custodes dropped to one knee. The chanting ceased, and I stood alone before him. You came far, Sung Jinwoo. His voice echoed, not in sound, but within my mind, further than any mortal has ever dared. I swallowed hard. I didn't come for glory. I came for truth. Truth is a weapon few can wield. Speak your question. I asked, why was I brought here? Why this galaxy? Why me? A pause, then a flicker of something, pity perhaps. The warp hungers for balance. It draws from every universe it touches. You were not summoned by chaos or by me. You were dragged here by the will of the Imperium. Dragged, like prey. Your essence consumes the warp's corruption. You are its antithesis, but such things cannot exist without cost. The more you purge, the thinner the veil becomes. You are destroying the balance that holds reality. So, if I keep fighting chaos, the galaxy will collapse into silence. No life, no warp, no future. That truth struck deeper than any blade. I had thought I was cleansing the galaxy, freeing it. Instead, I was unmaking the thing that held it together. The Emperor continued. You are not a hero. You are entropy given form, the shadow that follows salvation. I clenched my fists. Then what do you want me to do? Stand by and watch this galaxy rot? I want you to choose. His voice thundered through me like judgment itself. You carry the power to end the warp, to erase chaos forever. But if you do, you erase me as well. The Astronomicon will fade. Humanity will fall into darkness. Or... He leaned forward slightly, and the light around him dimmed. You could take my place. The words froze the air. Even the custodes shifted, their composure cracking for the first time in millennia. Take your place? I asked. You become the balance the galaxy needs, neither light nor shadow, flesh nor machine, mortal nor god. I didn't ask for this. No one does, he replied, but destiny is rarely merciful. For a long moment, we simply regarded each other, two beings bound by impossible weight. I realized then that he was not truly alive, not anymore. His will lingered through sheer force of belief. His consciousness existed only because humanity refused to let him die.
and I saw something else behind his golden light. Exhaustion. Millennia of endless vigilance. "You could rest," I said quietly, "and leave my children to the void. Maybe it's time they learn to live without gods." He didn't answer. The silence that followed was heavier than any war I had fought. Finally, the Emperor spoke again. "Before you decide, there is something you must witness, the truth beneath Mars." The moment he said it, my mind filled with visions, the red world, its surface burning, its core hollow. And at the heart of that hollow world, the void dragon stirred. He awakens, he remembers you, and if you do not face him, he will claim what remains of me. The throne began to shake, energy surging through its conduits. "Go, Shadow Monarch, confront the dragon, and then decide what kind of god you will become." The chamber exploded with light. My body dissolved into shadow, pulled across the stars once more. When I awoke, I stood beneath a crimson sky. The sands of Mars burned beneath my feet. The machine priests of the Adeptus Mechanicus were already kneeling, their binary chants rising in static reverence. They thought I was the Omnissiah incarnate, the prophecy fulfilled. I wasn't, but the thing buried beneath their world was something far worse. Still with us in the darkness? Hit that like button if this tale chills your soul.
The air of Mars was acrid with ozone and the metallic tang of blood. The once pristine deserts of the red world were scorched, fractured, and crawling with signs of ancient power stirring from its tombs. I walked through the forges of the Mechanicus, their priests murmuring in awe and fear, their cybernetic limbs twitching as they tried to analyze me. But nothing they did mattered. Not now. At the planet's core, the monoliths, massive, geometrically impossible structures, pulsed faintly with emerald light. Through the cracks of their tombs, I felt the presence I had been chasing since the Void Dragon first whispered in the warp. It was massive, older than the galaxy itself. Its form was ever shifting, a living constellation of darkness and energy. Teeth that could chew stars, wings that eclipsed planets. I had never encountered a being that could rival the sheer scale of my shadows until now. The Void Dragon stirred, opening its eyes, black holes of thought that devoured light. Its voice was neither in the material universe nor the warp. It vibrated through my very soul. You who consume the corruption, you who walk between shadow and flesh, you are here because you were chosen, because you must. I planted my feet firmly. I've fought gods, I've fought daemons, I've fought chaos incarnate. Nothing stops me. The Void Dragon tilted its head, studying me like a predator inspecting a clever prey.
Then you will understand. The warp is not a parasite. It is balance. Without it, even your emperor falls. Without it, this galaxy collapses. I frowned, remembering the words from Terra. If you erase the warp, you erase me as well. You've been feeding on the warp's corruption for ages. Every demon you consumed, every chaos god you repelled, it has been a correction of imbalance. Yet each time you've grown stronger. You are no longer mortal. You are its apex predator, and it exhaled a breath that tore reality. The test. I grinned, shadows coiling around me, seeping into the crevices of Mars. Then let's see who is truly Apex. The first strike came without warning. Its claws tore through the rock like titans, smashing continents, sending shockwaves that shattered the tombs. My shadow surged to meet it, coiling into massive living tendrils, blades forming along their edges, ready to slice, stab, and consume. The void dragon roared. Its wings beat with such force the atmosphere of the planet cracked. It was faster than I expected, striking with precision that no human mind could track. I was forced to use every trick, every shadow, every stolen fragment of the warp's energy. The battle was unlike anything in the 41st Millennium. Entire tomb complexes crumbled, monolithic constructs snapped like toothpicks, and the very crust of Mars rippled with psychic and physical shockwaves. It was perfect competence porn, not a single wasted move, not a fraction of hesitation. I adapted to every strike, countered every blow, and absorbed fragments of its energy into my shadows. Yet every attack brought escalation. The void dragon learned as fast as I did, twisting its attacks, reshaping the battlefield. The planet itself became a weapon, lava flows, collapsing mountains, psychic storms, shadows and ancient god energy clashed, shaking the foundations of the galaxy. Amid the chaos, I glimpsed the Mechanicus below. The priests were witnessing something beyond comprehension. Their god machines trembled, their calculations exploded in impossible numbers. This is not combat. This is evolution, I whispered to myself. And then I realized something horrifying. The void dragon wasn't just a threat, it was a mirror. Everything I had become, everything I had achieved, it could replicate. Shadows that devoured, strength that scaled beyond comprehension, intelligence that anticipated strategies, and it had been learning all of it since the moment I arrived in this universe. The first fatal mistake I made was thinking I could overpower it. The second was thinking I could outthink it. The third was thinking that victory would be immediate. Because now in the heart of Mars, the final phase began. The void dragon began to consume me. Not my shadows, not my body, my essence, my mind, the memories of every life I had taken, every power I had absorbed, every soul that whispered inside me. It reached for all of it, pulling, unraveling, testing. And for the first time, I felt fear. It wasn't terror at death. It was terror at being erased, at losing myself to something older, smarter, stronger than anything I had fought. But I did not break. Instead, I adapted. I became more.
Shadow shifted into forms the void dragon had never encountered. My essence fractured and multiplied, existing in multiple planes simultaneously. Every attack the dragon made was anticipated, countered, absorbed, and turned against it. The test had begun in earnest, and I would not fail. The shadows deepen. Prepare for the final reckoning in the next chapter.
The battle with the Void Dragon escalated beyond comprehension. Mars itself became a crucible, its deserts cracked and reformed with every strike. Mountains shattered into dust, and the very crust of the planet seemed to pulse with the rhythm of our conflict. The shadows within me stretched like living nightmares, coiling around the dragon's limbs and wings, forming blades and tendrils that could pierce reality. Every strike I made tore the air. Every move I took bent the planet beneath us. The dragon retaliated with force that threatened to rend the atmosphere itself, its claws carving scars on the surface so deep they were visible from orbit. Yet this was more than brute power. The dragon was cunning. Every move I made was met with a counter, every attack anticipated. It mirrored my shadows, using my own techniques against me, forcing me to innovate at a pace faster than I thought possible. For the first time, I realized that the predator I had become had a predator of its own. The combat was pure escalation. Lava spewed from the ground, caught in psychic storms that twisted into violent whirlwinds, carrying shards of debris the size of titans. My shadows absorbed these with ease, reshaping them into weapons that cut through the dragon's defenses. It adopted too, splitting its form into semi-etheric fragments, moving between planes of existence, striking from angles I could barely perceive. Amid this chaos, I glimpsed the Mechanicus observing from their sanctums. Their data slates and auspex arrays were fried almost immediately, unable to quantify the scale of what unfolded. Even Trazin, watching silently from a distance, could only blink as if recalculating the very rules of the galaxy. And then the dragon shifted tactics. Its voice resonated in my mind like a chorus of stars colliding. You are not complete. You are too human. To wield this power fully, you must embrace what you fear, your limits, your mortality, your shadow. It struck like a hammer, phasing into my mind and forcing me to relive every battle, every loss, every fragment of shadow I had absorbed. The warp surged in response, attempting to erase me entirely. My shadows writhed and screamed as if they could feel my terror. I froze for a heartbeat, letting its words sink in. Then I smiled. I don't understand, I whispered. I don't fear limits. I become the limit. My shadows expanded exponentially, covering Mars in a black tide. They split and reformed into impossible shapes, enveloping the dragon entirely. Every strike it made was absorbed, every attack mirrored. Its blows became fuel for my ascension. And then I acted.
I merged with my shadows entirely, letting them envelop me until I was no longer a single entity. I existed as many, a fractal predator, infinite and unyielding. The dragon struck again, but now I anticipated it before it moved, my presence slicing through its semi-etheric body. I tore its form apart, not by force alone, but by consuming its essence, integrating it into my being. Every fragment of power, every strategic thought, every fragment of consciousness became part of me. The dragon roared, a sound that cracked the planet's crust and rent the air itself. It twisted, reformed, and struck with ferocity. But it was too late. I was already beyond it. And then, with a single motion, I engulfed it entirely. The Void Dragon ceased to exist as a separate entity. Its knowledge, its power, its memory, all now flowed within me. The universe trembled at the event. Mars was silent. The planet had survived, barely, but it bore the scars of what had occurred. Craters larger than cities, mountains flattened, tectonics shattered. Yet I remained standing, shadows dissipating, the essence of the dragon now part of me. I felt different, stronger, not merely mortal, not merely shadow, but something greater. The whispers inside me, Grey Knights, demons, Mechanicus, Necrons, harmonized into a singular chorus. I had evolved beyond what I had thought possible. And somewhere in the Imperium I sensed the Emperor watching, not with anger, but with scrutiny, a silent acknowledgement. The galaxy had changed, not because I conquered it, not because I destroyed chaos, but because I became the next step. The Void Dragon was gone. The warp's balance was unsettled, and the Imperium would soon feel the presence of a being they could not classify, could not control, could not comprehend. The tension builds. Subscribe to witness more tales from the dark Millennium.
The aftermath of Mars was both eerie and profound. The deserts were scorched, the monoliths shattered, and the Mechanicus stood only tremble in awe as I emerged from the core. The planet's surface still pulsed faintly, residual energy of a god-beast now contained within me. Silence reigned, no daonic incursions, no cries of war, only the faint hum of ancient machinery and the whispers of shadows that now spoke as one. I stood amid the ruins, feeling every fragment of the galaxy's power thrumming in my veins. I had consumed the Void Dragon, and with it I had gained knowledge older than humanity itself. I could feel the warp bending to accommodate my presence, but I also felt the immense responsibility that came with it. The galaxy was fragile. Balance was delicate. Every action I took now had consequences that could ripple across millennia. And then I heard it, the distant whisper of the Emperor, not from Terra, but inside my mind, carried through the psychic currents of the galaxy. You have crossed a threshold, Shadow Monarch. You are neither mortal nor fully God, but the question remains, will you guide or will you consume? I considered the enormity of that question. For centuries, I had operated in shadows, devouring corruption, growing stronger, shaping destinies in silence. But now I was on the cusp of choosing the future of the Imperium itself. To act was to shape destiny. To hesitate was to allow chaos to recover. The Adeptus Mechanicus approached cautiously, their Magos Dominus Zerath trembling even under his mechanical enhancements. "Master of Shadows," he whispered, "the void, it is within you now. The universe itself bends to your will. The consequences cannot be measured." I nodded, my eyes glowing faintly violet as shadows swirled around me. "I know," I said, "but I also know this. Power without direction is meaningless. I will not let the galaxy collapse because mortals cannot comprehend balance." The sky above burned crimson as the final echoes of the Void Dragon's death energy dissipated. I felt the warp settle, but uneasily. There was still imbalance, still risk, still potential for disaster. The Chaos Gods had not yet forgiven me. Their whispers were faint but present, threats, taunts, challenges, promises of vengeance. And then the question of the Imperium arose. The Emperor watched, and I could feel his scrutiny across the vast expanse of space. I had not come to conquer, nor to destroy, but to understand. Yet my mere existence was a threat to the carefully maintained order he had built. I walked toward the teleporter platform prepared by the Mechanicus, intending to return to the surface of Mars. Zerath followed, whispering warnings of potential daonic retaliation. I stopped him. "We do not move yet. First, we must decide what this new power means. The galaxy has changed, and so must we." For hours we debated strategy. The Mechanicus argued caution, citing the limits of human comprehension. I reminded them that the galaxy itself was no longer limited by human rules. My shadows, the essence of the Void Dragon, the remnants of consumed chaos, even the echoes of grey nights, all these were tools, yet tools without intent were dangerous. By the time night fell on Mars, a plan had begun to take shape. I would not impose dominion, nor would I retreat into secrecy. The Imperium needed guidance, not tyranny. The warp needed containment, not annihilation. And I, a being of shadows and godlike power, would serve as the fulcrum upon which balance would pivot. I looked to the horizon, where the twin moons of Mars rose through a sky streaked with violet light. The shadows around me pulsed in anticipation. The galaxy awaited the next act, and I was ready to write it. But even in this moment of clarity, a whisper reminded me of what was to come. From the depths of the warp, from the fragments of chaos that had survived, and from the remnants of the gods I had defied, there was one certainty. The universe would not accept this power quietly, and I would be tested again. The shadows deepen, prepare for the final reckoning in the next chapter. The galaxy did not remain silent for long. Word of Mars's devastation spread faster than any sanctioned Imperial communique could contain.
The Adeptus Astartes, Imperial Guard, and rogue psychers all whispered rumors of a shadowed figure who had consumed a god beast and walked away unscathed. Fleets diverted from their campaigns not to defend worlds, but to witness the phenomenon, to either challenge it or worship it. Even the Chaos Gods, masters of deceit and destruction, stirred uneasily in the warp. Their demonic legions gathered, whispers of vengeance laced with fear. The Black Legion, though shattered, reassembled under Abaddon's vision, seeking to reclaim honor lost at Mars. Every Chaos warband felt it, the shadow that could erase even their gods, and none dared ignore the threat. I remained on Mars, observing, learning, and consolidating my shadows. My shadows had changed. No longer merely tools or weapons, they were extensions of my mind, capable of independent thought, capable of countering the most insidious demonic tactics. Each fragment of the Void Dragon's essence gave me insight into the mechanics of the galaxy, the flow of energy, and the hidden currents of fate. I became something more than mortal, more than predator. I became a fulcrum of balance. Yet, I could not ignore the Imperium. The Emperor had not withdrawn his observation. I felt him in every psychic pulse, every suppressed thought of his loyal subjects. The throne's light was steady, unwavering, and expectant. He was testing me, waiting to see if I would step into a role he could not, or if I would fall into the chaos I had fought so long. I made a decision. I would act, not as conqueror, not as destroyer, but as guide. My first step was subtle. Shadows swept across hive worlds, cleansing minor warp incursions, purging taint without leaving devastation in their wake. Demonic cults collapsed overnight, their members consumed by shadows that neither screamed nor burned. They simply vanished, leaving the universe a little quieter. The Mechanicus watched in awe and terror. "Master," Zirath said, "you wield power that could rival the Omnicia himself, yet you choose restraint." I smiled faintly. Balance is not about power, it's about preservation. There is a difference between eradication and guidance. But the calm was not to last. The first real challenge came from the warp itself. A breach near the edge of the segmentum obscurus. A demonic fleet poured forth, titanic beings of blood, metal, and flame. Their formation was deliberate, their intent obvious. They sought to draw me out. I did not hesitate. Shadows spread across the void like a living night. I absorbed the demons, countered their psychic blasts, and turned their attacks against one another. The battle raged for hours, felt like days, yet from orbit it seemed instantaneous. Ships that would have been destroyed by conventional fire were untouched. Entire demonic squadrons were annihilated before their claws could strike. And through it all, I felt the whispers, fragments of the Void Dragon, Grey Knights, and even remnants of Chaos intelligence offering strategy, warning me, guiding me. The experience was overwhelming, yet exhilarating. I had become more than predator. I had become strategist, tactician, and judge of the galaxy's fate. Finally, when the last demon had dissolved into nothingness, I sensed the next threat. Subtle, intelligent, ancient. The warp itself stirred differently now, as if it recognized me as a counterforce it could not immediately manipulate. A presence older than the Emperor, watching, waiting, calculating.
I knew then that this was the final act of my ascension. To truly stabilize the Imperium, to hold the galaxy against chaos, I would have to confront that force. Whatever it was, it would test not only my strength, but my very understanding of balance, morality, and destiny. Mars remained my base, a fortress of shadows and silence, but the galaxy was watching. The stage was set for a confrontation that would decide the fate of everything. The tension builds. Subscribe to witness the final reckoning of shadows and gods.
The final confrontation did not arrive with fanfare. There were no trumpets of warning, no heralds announcing the approach of destiny. It came as a whisper in the warp, a ripple that shook the very foundations of reality. A presence older than any god I had faced, more patient than the void dragon, more cunning than the emperor himself. I sensed it first as a coldness, a void within the Imperium where even the shadows recoiled. The stars themselves seemed to dim as I traversed the space between systems, drawn inexorably toward this force. It was not chaos, nor was it any known entity. It was existence itself, the balance behind the balance, the silent hand that guided the rise and fall of empires across the millennia. When I emerged into the system that bore its mark, I saw a black star, pulsing with absence, consuming light around it. A gravity well that should have shredded fleets pulled me gently, almost reverently into orbit. And there, suspended above a dead planet, it revealed itself. A form that my mind could only comprehend through shadows. Geometry impossible, wings stretching across light years, eyes that saw past time, and a voice that spoke without sound. You have devoured, conquered, and survived, but you seek to impose order where none can exist. Why? I stepped forward, shadows flowing into an impenetrable cloak around me. Because if I do not, all will perish. Balance requires action. The galaxy is not strong enough to hold itself. And yet, you are but a fragment. You cannot enforce what even the throne cannot sustain. I smiled, letting shadows coalesce into blades and forms that mirrored every god I had faced. I am no longer just a fragment. I have absorbed the void dragon, learned from it, adapted, and become something more. I am the fulcrum the universe has been waiting for. The entity laughed, a sound that rippled across space-time, bending light and cracking the void. Very well, then prove it. The battlefield became the fabric of reality itself. Stars tore themselves apart, nebulae collapsed, and entire planets were drawn into our conflict. Shadows clashed with pure existential force. Every strike I made threatened to unravel universes. Every attack from the entity tested my limits. I adapted instantly, merging with shadows, the remnants of the dragon, and every fragment of consciousness I had consumed. My strategies became preemptive, my reflexes instantaneous, my power absolute. Yet the entity was no mindless foe. It countered, manipulated, and anticipated, forcing me to transcend not only physical and psychic limits, but the very essence of decision-making. I realized then that this confrontation was not about victory, but understanding. I had to become more than predator, more than God. I had to become balance itself. With a final surge, I extended my shadows across the void, entwining with the entity. We became one in conflict, one in comprehension. I absorbed the logic, the knowledge, the purpose, yet did not consume. Instead, I integrated, understanding the universe's true equilibrium. The struggle ended not with annihilation, but with harmony. The black star dissolved. The dead planet below remained scarred, but intact. The galaxy stabilized. Chaos withdrew, tentative and wary. The Emperor's presence reached me across the stars, not as judgment, but as acknowledgement. I stood alone, yet connected to every force that shaped the 41st millennium. Shadows whispered, the galaxy breathed, and I knew my purpose: to guide, to balance, and to act where gods could not. I was neither hero nor villain. I was the fulcrum. And somewhere deep within the Imperium, the Void Dragon's essence stirred within me, a reminder of the power I now commanded. The universe was no longer merely a battlefield. It was a canvas, and I held the brush. The 41st millennium would remember this era differently, not as the time of the Emperor alone, nor as the reign of chaos, but as the time of a being of shadow, void, and power stepped into the scales and held them steady. The galaxy would tremble. Some would revere me, others fear me, and countless would attempt to challenge what they could not comprehend. But the balance would hold, for now. Because I had learned what the universe demanded, that even in darkness, even in light, one force must stand unwavering, one shadow to guide the cosmos without consuming it entirely. And I would remain. The battles, the devouring of gods, the confrontation with the Void Dragon, and the final reckoning with the force behind reality itself had changed me irrevocably. I was no longer Sung Jinwoo of the Shadow Monarch. I was a being who had touched the threads of the universe, reshaped them, and yet restrained the power to prevent their destruction. The Imperium of man remained standing, though its understanding of the galaxy would forever be incomplete. The Emperor acknowledged my existence, not as a threat, but as a balance his throne could not enforce alone. Chaos retreated, wary and cautious, and the warp itself stabilized, whispering less insistently than before. I had not conquered the galaxy. I had saved it from itself, or at least given it a chance to endure. But the cost was unmistakable. Worlds lay scarred, monoliths shattered, and the whispers of those I had absorbed, friends, foes, demons, gods, reminded me constantly of the price of power. I carried not just their strength, but their memories, their burdens, their pain, and I bore it willingly, knowing that only through understanding and balance could the 41st millennium survive. The galaxy would continue its endless cycle of war, corruption, and heroism. But now it had a guardian it did not recognize, a shadow that moved between stars, unseen but ever present, a being capable of intervening where mortals, gods, and demons faltered. I had become the fulcrum, neither fully mortal nor divine, neither hero nor villain, a shadow to guide, a predator to protect, a force to balance the scales of the universe.
And in the silence between stars, I knew that the story was far from over. For in the 41st millennium, even shadows must rise to meet destiny.